We should 100% keep all statues, all monuments, all of our American history, because this isn't about erasing the Confederacy. This isn't about having an honest conversation. It's not about George Floyd or helping and healing racism. America is not an inherently racist country. Anyone with common sense knows this. This isn't about racism or George Floyd. This is about tearing apart our country and completely erasing Americans' history. This is a Marxist totalitarian takeover to erase Americans and everything that we know and love, even the good things and the bad things, and replace it with their own government. This is very dangerous. This is Orwellian. And even though we have parts of our history that we don't like, that we don't agree with, that we're perhaps racist, we can't just erase our history, because where does it end then? We have people, activists of Black Lives Matter, like Shaun King, calling for the erasure of Jesus Christ anytime that he is depicted white. There's no end. They will continue to rip down statues and monuments, and they will continue to take over America, because this is what it's about. It's a takeover. If they can take down a Lincoln Memorial statue, then they can tear down our free speech, they can ban the Second Amendment, and they can rip apart our Constitution. This is about control. This is about taking over. This is about erasing America. This is not about having any kind of a healthy or honest conversation or truly, genuinely healing racism. Yes, statues must stay. All of our American history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, must stay.
Statues for those that were trying to rip our nation apart, and quite frankly, were pro-slavery, should be torn down. But there is a legal way and a process to do that. Where do they belong? Do these names have to be erased from history? Absolutely not. We in the United States of America need to know our history, learn from our history, so we don't repeat it. But to have abolitionists, suffragettes, Ulysses Grant torn down, I just think that's wrong. The Confederacy, yes, that has to be not put up on a pedestal literally, but that belongs in a museum and in history books. You don't see Germany having statues to those in the Third Reich. They know their history, but they don't applaud and they don't put up on a pedestal the bad part of their history.
Hello, I'm David Grasso, and you're watching Bold TV. Today, we're debating what cultural staples we should keep or cancel. You already heard from our panelists. We have Leslie Marshall, a Democratic strategist and a nationally syndicated radio host, and DeAnna Lorraine, a former congressional candidate for California's 12th district. Thank you both for being here for this important conversation.
Thank you.
So, Leslie, should we move on? We got to get rid of these landmarks?
Well, it depends on the landmark. I think, like I said in the opener, you don't say, well, Ulysses Grant, who was a hero and, not only led the Union, but saved our United States of America from being a divided States of America, because he was gifted a slave who he did not mistreat and he freed. The anger comes in tearing down that statue from his wife's family who owned slaves. So I think when people say you can't pick and choose, absolutely you pick and choose. Is this somebody that we want to represent the United States of America and to be honored by being up on a podium? Or are they just supposed to be a chapter in a history book and maybe a statue inside of a museum instead of a square? Look, I'm a white woman, but if you talk to somebody who is Native American about the Redskins, for example, if you talk to somebody who's African American about some of the names of halls at universities or some of these landmarks, they're going to tell you of an offense. They're going to tell you of a pain that's something that I, as a white woman, I can't relate to. And I think it's about time that America, and quite frankly, white America, listen to the people of color in this country, to the things, monuments as well, that are offensive to them and really don't have a place in the town square.
DeAnna, you mentioned the problem with the slippery slope, right? And Leslie is suggesting that maybe we should selectively cancel. But how is that determined, and why are you concerned that this might get out of control?
Well, that's the problem with the left, and for those who are arguing for tearing these kinds of things down. And this isn't just about tearing down monuments. This has been happening for decades with the left. There is no end to it. A couple of years ago, and still now they're trying to ban or change certain Christmas songs because they're finding that to be sexist or offensive. Banning Aunt Jemima, the Dixie Chicks just changed their name. Lady Antebellum just changed their name, these famous bands. Now Disneyland has just decided to change the famous ride Splash Mountain because that may carry racist connotations potentially. So there is no end in sight. That's the problem. And I'm sorry that some people feel offended or outraged by that. But, we're all going to have to deal with this. We all have certain emotions and feelings, but we're creating a culture of outrage where outrage and emotions takes over facts, where outrage and emotion is they're ruling the day, and it becomes mob rule. For instance, what happened with just Bubba over the weekend of NASCAR. He became so outraged that he thought a simple garage door pull was a noose. Okay, and it turned our whole country upside down for a couple of days and stoked an already divided nation, racial tensions even more. And of course, there's no apology afterwards, really. There's none of that. There's no healing. The damage is already done. So there is no end to the left. They will continue to rip down monuments. Again, Sean King calling for the removal of Jesus Christ. That tells you that there is no end in sight. They will continue to rip down things, erase our history, be outraged, and the outrage level will continue to increase over the most minuscule things, like, again, like a song or like a ride at Disneyland. We're going to have nothing left if the left has their way.
One of the people in history that hasn't fared well are women, and you are both women. So how do we deal with that side of history? Because history is kind of ugly, the way we've treated, certain ethnic groups, women, etc., people who didn't have power historically. So how do we balance, not going down a slippery slope like your counterpart is telling us, but also respecting that, certain, characters in history didn't have a good track record?
Look, again, there's a place for history and there's a place for honor. Adolf Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. There is not a statue, nor should there be, of Adolf Hitler in Germany. The German people know it is an ugly part of their past. It's something they would love to forget. They can't. There are reminders of it almost every day, not only in Germany, but throughout the world. But there are plenty of photos of Hitler in museums, and certainly it is taught in school. It's funny. DeAnna said that let's talk about the facts. Well, the facts are Jesus wasn't a Caucasian. The facts are that children aren't being taught in school that there was a massacre of African Americans and African American businesses by a white mob in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're not always told. We had to have the story. I grew up outside of Boston, and I used to go to Plymouth, Massachusetts every year for a field trip. And as a child, I wasn't told the truth about the white man, the pilgrim, and the Native Americans that were here. Yes, that's been changed, and there are a lot of signs that have been changed in Plymouth and things in our history books. I'm all for facts. But do we honor someone who is a nasty part of our history? No, you can learn from history. You can learn about history. We must be educated on the facts and the truth. And when DeAnna talks about united, we will not be united if we're offending what is soon to be, by 2054, the majority of the population of this country, people of color. And that is not, we're not going to be united if we don't really listen to them. She talked about having a conversation. Well, this is more than a conversation. And one of the reasons for the protest are people are tired of the conversations. They want action. They want justice. And that's why you see people so angry that continue to protest day in and day out throughout this nation, because they're tired of the talk. They want action.
DeAnna, I'll give you the last word here. You're in a place that's been minority majority for quite some time. Obviously you ran, so you had to appeal to different communities and, really build a coalition if you wanted to get elected. How do you feel about what your counterpart just said?
Well, racism, first of all, I'm curious, what justice are you seeking? The people who are rioting, those who are looting, those who are protesting day in and day out, what exact changes are they seeking? What kind of justice are they wanting? Because we are all equal in America. I know that you don't see that. But that's what I see. And I see that people, those who are focused on skin color are actually those who are on the left, which is interesting. And I see that racism is something that certain people may have. And I disagree with it. I mean, if I know any single racist, I'm not going to be friends with this person. I'm going to call them out. I don't know any racists personally. I don't know anyone who judges someone by the color of their skin. And but if we start correcting people's thoughts, we're getting into Orwellian thought policing. We're never going to be able to fully correct someone's thoughts. We're just going to suppress free speech and suppress free thoughts, and we're going to erase our history. So I'm not exactly sure. It seems like the left are just more interested in thought policing, removing freedom of speech, erasing our history, and also positioning, for example, all policemen as bad, as criminals, and that we need to defund the police and replace the police. It's the wrong way to go about this, I believe, and it's the wrong way to stir up racial tensions, even when nobody today has owned a slave. No one today was ever a slave. I think, again, we need to focus more on, instead of skin color, judging someone by the skin, or talking about separation, we need to talk about unity. We are all Americans. At the end of the day, we're all Americans. And is it really helpful to divide Americans even further, like what we're doing now with race and with Black Lives Matter, and with a moment that should be so sacred, which is standing for the national anthem in unity? Are we really wanting to desecrate that moment? Because from what it looks like, this creates a lot more disunity and tension than unity in our country.
Ladies, thank you for being here for this conversation. And most importantly, thank you for being respectful to each other. Thank you all for watching. Have an excellent day.